Have you ever pictured Benjamin Franklin as a serious old man with glasses holding a kite in a lightning storm? Well, buckle up, because behind that dignified founding father exterior was a man who took nude air baths, tried to electrocute his dinner, and even wrote a scientific essay about how to make farts smell good. Yes, really. Today, we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Benjamin Franklin, America's most eccentric genius.
Franklin was born in Boston in 1706, the 15th child in a family of 17. 15th! Imagine dinner time. No wonder he learned early to fight for attention. His dad boiled soap and dipped candles for a living. And young Ben hated every minute of it. He called the family trade smelly and monotonous. What he did love? Books. So much so that he once skipped meals and lived on bread and water just to save money for reading. At one point, he even became a vegetarian, partly for moral reasons, but mostly because cabbage was cheaper than meat. That's our first quirk. Franklin's diet experiments weren't about health fads. They were about financing his book addiction. Now, you might think of Franklin as a wise old sage, but as a teen, he was basically the original internet troll. In 1722, apprenticed to his older brother James, who ran a newspaper, Franklin wasn't allowed to publish under his own name. So, he created a fake identity, a witty widow named Silence Dogood. Mrs. Dogood wrote hilarious letters poking fun at Boston society, religious hypocrisy, and the lack of education for women. The readers loved her. Some men even sent marriage proposals to the imaginary widow. Franklin finally confessed it was him, a 16-year-old boy, and his brother never forgave him. That teenage prank launched his lifelong love of satire and poking fun at authority. By 17, Franklin had had enough of his brother's temper and bolted from Boston. He arrived in Philadelphia broke, dirty, and carrying 3 loaves of bread under his arms like some awkward grocery model. That moment, sweaty, bedraggled, and munching bread, was Franklin's grand entrance into the city that would later hail him as its favorite son. Franklin's obsession with self-improvement deserves its own Netflix miniseries. At 20, he created a list of 13 virtues to live by, including temperance, industry, and frugality. He tracked his progress daily in a little chart, like the original bullet journal. Every morning he'd ask, "What good shall I do today?" And every night, "What good have I done?" He admitted he never achieved perfection, but the attempt turned him into one of the most disciplined and quirky figures in American history. Imagine if your New Year's resolutions included moral perfection, and you actually charted it with graphs. That's Franklin. Now, here's where Franklin gets weird. He believed fresh air was the secret to good health, so every morning he'd sit completely naked in front of his open window, taking what he proudly called an air bath. Neighbors in Philadelphia probably got more enlightenment than they asked for, but Franklin swore by it. He insisted people didn't catch colds from the cold, they caught them from bad air indoors. In a way, he was ahead of his time, sniffing around germ theory a century early. Still, imagine strolling past old Ben airing out the goods. Franklin wasn't just a statesman, he was a mad scientist with a sense of humor. Some of his quirks. At 11, he invented swim fins. For his hands, picture baby Franklin swimming around Boston Harbor with paddle hands. He later built the glass harmonica, a musical instrument made of spinning glass bowls that sounded so haunting that Mozart and Beethoven composed for it. And of course, the turkey incident. Franklin once bragged that he could kill a turkey using electricity and cook it on the spot. At a picnic, he tried and promptly electrocuted himself instead, waking up singed, embarrassed, and hungry. Franklin's wit was legendary, so legendary that during the writing of the Declaration of Independence, the other founding fathers refused to let him draft it. Why? Because they were afraid he'd slip in a joke. Imagine America's birth certificate with a dad joke footnote. Franklin had to settle for editing Jefferson's draft, probably biting his tongue the whole time. Franklin wasn't exactly the Puritan role model. In fact, he wrote a letter titled Advice to a Young Man on the Choice of a Mistress, where he recommended older women as lovers because they were grateful, discreet, and, in his words, in the dark, all cats are grey. Yep, founding father, inventor, diplomat, and 18th century Tinder philosopher.
But perhaps his most famous eccentric moment came in 1781, when he wrote an essay to a European academy politely titled To the Royal Academy of Brussels. Today, it's known simply as Fart Proudly. Franklin argued that instead of wasting time on useless experiments, scientists should solve a real human problem: how to make farts smell like perfume. He even suggested inventing a pill that could turn flatulence into roses or violets. Imagine Franklin in a lab coat. Gentlemen, behold, Chanel number 2. Even in death, Franklin kept things unconventional. In his will, he left 1,000 pounds each to Boston and Philadelphia, but with instructions that it be invested for 200 years. By the 1990s, his quirky trust fund had grown into millions, funding schools, scholarships, and civic projects. 2 centuries after his death, Franklin was still helping tradesmen get their start. A final prank on time itself. So next time you see Franklin's face on the $100 bill, don't just think founding father. Think of the man who tanned naked at his window, invented musical instruments for fun, chased tornadoes, trolled Boston with a fake widow, and proudly asked the world's scientists to make farts smell better. Benjamin Franklin wasn't just a statesman or an inventor. He was America's first viral personality, playful, comical, brilliant, and unforgettable. If you enjoyed this dive into Franklin's bizarre side, hit that like button, subscribe for more weird history, and remember, even geniuses are a little ridiculous.